Hello and welcome back to the Live for Today, Plan for Tomorrow podcast. I'm your host, Gabe Bodner, with the Bodner team of One Trust Home Loans. And we've got a special guest today with a very interesting topic. Evie Cohen. Thank you, Evie, for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And so Evie is a deaf educator with JADE, and JADE stands for Jewish Association for Deaf Education. And Evie and I have known each other actually for several years in a couple different capacities. And Evie is a past client of ours, but also through the real estate community. Evie's been a wonderful realtor for many, many years, serving many clients. And as she's transitioning out of real estate and really transitioning into being a deaf educator, we bumped into each other recently at an event actually at the Boulder JCC, as a matter of fact, Aging at Altitude a couple weeks ago, and just reconnected. And Evie, it was so nice to see you. And as you just started to tell me what you're doing now, I was very fascinated. Um, Obviously, death is a part of life, and death is something that everybody will eventually have to deal with, whether they like it or not. And it's not a topic many people really are comfortable, in my opinion, in my experience, that people are comfortable talking about. So when you told me what you were doing, I was really kind of blown away that there is this organization that provides death education and support, not just after death, but before and during and the process. Because as I have unfortunately gone through the death experience and process with family in the past, it is a process. Um, so, with that being said, I'm really excited about our conversation today. So, why don't you tell me a little bit about Jade and what Jade really does? And then we can kick it off from there.
All righty. Well, thank you. And I'll explain how I got involved, how I got interested in this topic that nobody wants to talk about. In fact, sometimes we use the phrase, talking about death won't kill you.
Fair enough.
We do know it's, nobody wants to face it, but it's inevitable. Um, and the Jewish religion happens to have a lot of processes. So,
Mm,
uh, that make it a little bit easier to do the grief and mourning. That's
mm.
kind of how what I've discovered. And I got involved because I think I had a kind of a transformation. Now it's 30 years ago. It's hard to believe.
Wow.
But when my parents were dying in Florida, I moved there to oversee their care, provide the love they needed and the decision making. And during that process of 3 years of caring for my mom, my dad, and my aunt, we had hospice involved the whole time. And it's a time that I was experiencing the anticipatory grief that is really knowing it was the end of my parents' life. And so I attended support groups and did a lot of reading and I got pretty much interested in the afterlife. I
Mm.
think that was my way of coping with, I don't want to face the death, so I'm going to try to think of how they can be with me for a long time. And then I kind of joke about, I don't want to miss anything. So I believe in the afterlife because I want to watch my grandchildren and my great grandchildren and see what happens. So, but in truth, I really read a lot, especially a book by two hospice nurses about that was called Final Gifts.
Mm.
And so the whole process is intriguing to me as a mystery. So, one of the things I've been doing since I've lived in Boulder County, I live in Lafayette. Um, as soon as I moved here in 2000, shortly after, I joined an organization called the Hever Kadisha, which is uh, an organization that takes care of the bodies from the time of death to burial. And through that, I became acquainted. Well, I actually was acquainted with Susan Kramer for a long time. She's a co-founder of JADE. And 2 years ago, they formed this organization, Susan and a partner. And their mission is teaching mere mortals, as we call it, what are these beautiful transitions that help families deal with the death of their loved ones, before and mostly after death. Um, so they tapped me to be one of the on-the-ground educators, because even within our Jewish religion, people aren't that familiar with all the processes. And in fact, I really love it when I meet people that have never heard of Chaver Kadisha, and I teach them about it. So I would say one of the main things about Jewish tradition on death is respect and dignity and honoring the body. So it's just like we believe in respect for the living. The body is actually a combination of body and soul. And so this main practice of Hever Kadisha, like as I say, is between death and burial. And by the way, that is the major preference in Judaism. We do know people do cremation, but it is not really a Jewish choice. Um, so one of the things I was telling Gabe that I could talk about is the differences between a Jewish funeral and a non-Jewish one. I could say Jewish and Christian, but there's a lot of other religions. Some are actually more related to Jewish, because I think Buddhists have some more similarities. But if you're interested in that, Gabe, I could certainly go over a few of those differences.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's a fantastic introduction, Evie, and kind of kicking this off and really understanding. I think the Hever Kadisha, first of all, let's speak of that, because what you said I find very fascinating, and I've even felt this, which is, the separation of the body from the soul, right? From the spirit, and this experience that the spirit is leaving the body upon death, and Kadisha rather, this process of staying with the physical body as the spirit continues to live on,
Yes.
right? So with that, what's the time frame when we're talking about traditional Jewish burial and traditional Jewish or Jewish traditions rather? What's the time frame typically that in the Jewish tradition from the time of death that the body is to be buried? How many days?
Well, if we went into the way it's done in Israel, they try to do it before the next sundown after death. But that rarely happens in the US because people are used to wanting their relatives to come in. But typically, it's 2 nights. At the most, it's generally 3 nights before the burial. So the idea is to do it as quickly as possible. And part of it is to make it really real, get the grief started, because there are things like in a Jewish burial, the community comes together and helps the start of the burial. The pile of dirt is next to the grave, and we take turns shoveling the dirt in there. And that's one of the most meaningful things to me, the thud of the dirt on top of the casket. It's real, and it begins. We believe in the venting of the emotions, and we have these milestones. So let me go back to being specific about, do we know how long it takes for the soul to leave the body? Not, we don't really know, but part of the reason the Hever Kadisha people sit with the body is we're trying to help the soul have a peaceful transition. So, and there's two parts of what the Hever Kadisha does. we do a ritual bathing at the funeral home. There's a prep room, and we have certain prayers we say, and we have a guide, a little manual, and we follow the procedure. We have buckets. We do a little symbolic cleansing with washcloth, and we have buckets of water that we pour as if we're giving them a mikvah, that is a dipping in of flowing water. So we're starting with prayers then, and we talk to the soul. Um, so then, and we dress the body in a white garment. It's like a three-piece garment. The theory too is everybody is equal in birth and in death. And so the garment is a little like priests in ancient times, a white garment of trousers, a shirt, and a tunic top. Um, so we believe in dust to dust. So, or you could say it ashes to ashes, but it's dust to dust, or putting the body back in the earth. So we want it to decompose naturally and as quickly. So the natural pine box with no metal is how the body is buried. So in the room where we sit with the what did somebody call it? But anyway, the corpse, before it is gone through this tahara, the ritual ceremonial bathing, it could be lying under a quilt on a table, on a stretcher. And once it's in the casket, you could call it coffin. Um, I learned there was a difference. A coffin is
Interesting.
the
What
corpse.
what is the difference, by the way? Not to get you off track, but
No, but it's kind of funny. Somebody's finally said, well, a coffin is more like Dracula with the uh, funny shape.
interesting.
Casket is actually a rectangle, but it's interchangeable. I
Gotcha.
I say it interchangeably, but the spirit or the soul, it could take a little while to leave, most likely, but we can't be sure. That one of the reasons, and a lot of people, because of Hollywood and movies, will hear the word Shiva, which is sitting at home after the body is buried. And when you're very religious, you do a lot more observances and traditions, and you might cover mirrors. That's what you hear about is a tradition. And some people think it has to do with don't be vain, don't look at your own um, aesthetics, or but actually other people point out it's more that if the soul is transitioning and it's traveling, it often will go back home, and it's kind of confusing to the soul to look in the mirror and not see the body.
That's
So
fascinating.
yeah, um, which again, then I digress a little to afterlife. The fact that some people have not heard that Jews believe in an afterlife, and some people think it's because whatever the Christians believe in, we don't. And I find
Hmm.
that kind of amusing. But angels are in our Jewish religion. We have Gabriel and Mordecai, and I'm sorry, not Mordecai, Raphael. How does it go? I'm forgetting Uriel. And I'm nervously in my little interview and forgetting the four that we talk about. One's in front of you, one's behind, left to the right, and one's behind you. Um, so yeah, I just I think it's a beautiful thing, and we have lovely books and anecdotes, stories written about the beautiful experiences and sitting and communicating with that soul in the room. So let's see, Chevra Kadisha, we have the two things, the bathing and the sitting with the soul till burial. I was going to try to think of more differences too. We never look at the face of the body in the Jewish religion. We feel that it's not respectful. If they can't look at us, we should not stare at them.
Interesting.
So even during the bathing, we very carefully keep like a cloth on the face and we only expose little parts of the body that are necessary for washing, but we respect is primary. Um, so we don't embalm. We also feel it's desecration of the body. If you learn about the embalming procedure, it's pretty, what shall I call it? Well, desecrating is one word, but it's hard on the body.
Mm.
And I could have encouraged people to just ask the funeral home to use ice packs instead of embalming. Um, and of course, embalming would slow down decomposition, and we want the decomposition to be fast.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Uh,
Fascinating. So, in what I'm hearing again so far is, some of these traditions obviously come from the Old Testament.
yes,
And that's why I think you alluded to the fact that there's actually a lot of similarities, most likely, with Christianity beliefs, because obviously Christianity has both the Old Testament and the New Testament. But with all of that being said, there are significant differences in beliefs and traditions throughout this death and mourning process. And so, Hever Kadisha, you talked about, sitting Shiva, you talked about, which we didn't talk a lot about, but sitting Shiva is this time when family and friends come together for 7 days, right? And to
right.
support the family in the time of loss and obviously say mourners cottage together and come together to support um, each other during this difficult time. Um, and outside of that, I know there's a 30-day period and there's a 12-month period and all of that. But let's talk a little bit more about JADE. And is this an organization, by the way, that specifically and only helps Jewish individuals and families going through this process, or does it also support non-Jews as well?
That's a good question because one of my tasks, one of my jobs, is to find organizations that help all people or Jewish that might have Jewish people that they're serving, like hospices. So we love to have availability to learn about Jewish practices. So Jade has a wonderful website and a really terrific app or tool called Hineni, and that's the Hebrew word is I am here. And we're saying, I'm here to educate you. So Hineni it's broken down into like 14 topics. It's interactive and it's available for anybody. It's free. And Jade also does wonderful free webinars monthly, and we're beginning to do more and more.
Hmm.
Uh, and they're all on a different topic having to do with the end of life in Jewish tradition. So those webinars, so you go to jadeinfo.org, and maybe we'll put that in the description under that. And Hineni is Hineni. So it's actually available as a menu choice on Jade Info, um, or you can go directly to it. But it's easy to follow and it's kind of quick to interact with. So I'm just thinking like it has topics, by the way. We have something similar to last rites. It's a good thing to have a person, if they're knowing they're dying, at the end to say this something we call vidui, which is a prayer. And um, so I really like that we're including this kind of an interview in Gabe's um, podcast series because it does have to do with life and death. In fact, those many milestones in Jewish death are to help the mourners, the survivors, have a better grief process. So we don't want them in it for the rest, dwelling in grief for the rest of their life, but we encourage um, venting the sadness, the deep sadness at first, and then remembering, because we have what we call yard site, where we can light a candle every year at the anniversary of the death, for instance. So remembrance is important. Um, and as Gabe said, they're the sitting Shiva, they call it sitting, so that the most direct, close mourners should really not go to work, not do anything else for the 7 days. And some people, if you were very observant, you'd have a, a gathering once a day for at least once a day for the 7 days. Nowadays, in modern times, it's nice if you have at least 1 or 2 days of what we call sitting Shiva, where the community comes in to the home. It doesn't have to be the home where the deceased person was, but it often is. Uh, and I love the sharing of stories. When you get people from different way parts of that deceased person's life together and expressing their love and their memories, you can have laughter and tears at the same time. But
Yeah, it can be a painful and yet beautiful experience.
yes, it can be a beautiful experience.
Yeah, if I've again had to deal with it personally, and my wife and my family, and we've being Jewish, we followed some of the traditions ourselves, and sat Shiva and had it at our homes and brought family and friends in and shared stories. And as well as I know, Boulder is an interesting place where a lot of people are not from, but many people come here because of the community. And so when you come here and you didn't grow up here, it means a lot of your friends and your closest friends didn't necessarily meet your parents. And
Right,
so, unfortunately, when you lose a parent and your friends didn't really have the opportunity to grow up knowing your parents, that opportunity to share stories and show pictures and laugh and reminisce together is a beautiful experience. And again, I think, as you said, that grieving process. Um, it it's painful. It hurts. But yet, I think some of these traditions that you're referring to allow you to go through that process, one, not alone, and
right.
two, faster in a way where you're not holding all the emotions in and you're not sitting with them in a way that they're tearing you up inside.
And
This is a
affecting your behavior um, as you could go on. Yeah.
Right. And preventing you from going on. And I think that that's a lesson that's hard, but that I've learned personally is that you do have to move on. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that you forget about your loved ones ever, right?
Right.
And the memory
Right.
continues and then, may their memory be a blessing, as we say, right?
Uh,
And
right.
lighting the yard site is a wonderful opportunity every year on the anniversary of their death to remember them. But it is a time that we have to reflect and be grateful and remember. But this process of grieving, and sometimes that grieving starts before death. And I
That's
think,
right. That's what I don't know if I used the word, but the 3 years of being in Florida taking care of my parents, it's called anticipatory grief. I
okay,
mean, that's a well-known in the psychological field. You can start, and that's why you might find some people not expressing as much grief after the death, because the death could be bittersweet. If somebody was suffering a lot,
sure.
even
Yeah.
uh, the mind, when the mind goes starts with the dementia.
Yeah.
And when your relative has dementia, you start to lose them. So you're living with that loss painfully for quite a while because they're not the person they were. Um, so yeah, anticipatory grief is a big thing.
Sure.
I was going to
And,
mention in terms of remembering, one of the things that's a Jewish thing is when you go visit the grave, you bring a stone and you put it down on the grave. And that we could do research and find lots of reasons for that. And right now it's kind of escaping me about the many different kinds of reasons. But I guess one of them is just a little physical thing. I've been here. I remember you. And Jade has a logo, and you'll notice it's like three round beach stones, like a cairn. It's a marker, and a cairn in a hiking trail is like remember this spot.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's beautiful.
yes,
Yes. And I did not notice that on the logo, but now that you mention it, I see
I,
the
yeah,
significance and the resemblance. So thank you for pointing that out. Um, well, this has been very educational for me, and yet I believe that this is again a topic many people don't want to talk about, but it is so important to talk about. And I think the other piece is talking with family about what your wishes really are, right? And how important that is. And it's difficult, but yet people I know when my father unfortunately was battling cancer and we had to have these conversations and he wanted to be buried in a shroud, right? And such that as you described, right? But those are hard conversations and yet I think they can be very beautiful once again to acknowledge what your loved one wants and to respect their wishes in their end of life. And so, do you have any classes or webinars or how do you suggest maybe for people approaching that with older parents or siblings to just open up the dialogue to say, hey, Evie, what do you want? Right? How can we honor you in your final phase of life, if you will?
that is also another excellent question because I don't think we have at the moment, we're still growing. We're a baby organization. We have plenty going on, but we're always looking at what we need to do more. So the one way we're offer that, because by the way, okay, the one way we offer that is through the Death Schmooze. That is an open uh, conversation once a month. It's a Zoom thing that anybody can join, and it's free. You've probably heard of death cafes. That's been going on for at least 10 years, where it used to be before COVID, it was you could meet in a coffee house um, and just talk about anything on your mind about death. If you're worried about it, if you dream about it, if you have questions that you want to share, ideas. So Death Schmooze is let's talk about anything. So that's one thing. But we do have one topic of our 14 topics on the Hineni tool called pre-planning.
Hmm.
And we could spend another at least half hour, an hour on that. So we won't do that now, but it's an important thing to do. It's a blessing for your family at the time of death, and as mortuaries call it, time of need. It's very stressful to make decisions about where or when in casket and this and that. So pre-planning, finding which cemetery you want to be at and which mortuary you want to use. And that's another thing people don't even realize, especially in the Boulder area. It's two decisions. Which mortuary will take care of your body, pick it up, and take care of the funeral service. And then which real estate do you want? Where do you
Hmm.
want people to visit you? And keep in mind, visiting you mean it may your children might not want to visit you, but your grandchildren might. It's surprising. Like grandchildren may want to learn more about their grandparent, and that was another digression we could go down. Why cemeteries? Why should we have cemeteries? Well, that could be another time. People are welcome to contact me, and as I said, Jay does like teaching all people, not just Jewish people. And we have had a lot of non-Jewish people admire us for the way we deal with grief and mourning. And we can all share ideas from each other. So
Sure. Well, that's wonderful, Evie. Thank you so much for being here and helping explain some of these beautiful traditions in such a difficult time. And again, for what you do as an educator around a topic that many people, again, don't really want to talk about.
Right.
But it doesn't kill you, like you said. And I think it's a powerful discussion. So with that being said, again, thank you for being here. Thank you for what you do. And if people do want to reach out to you, what is the best way to get in touch with you to learn more?
Well, I would say that when you put some of your description, you can get me at jade@jadeinfo.org. I'm open to having people call me too, but probably it's easier to just reach out that way first, but
Okay. And your email address is evie@jadeinfo.org. Is that right?
correct.
All right. And I will put that in the description. And so, Evie, thank you once again. This has been wonderful. And I really appreciate you and opening yourself up to sharing and allowing anybody to really learn more about this process and learning more about what they can do for themselves and their family and their loved ones. So, with that, you have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you, and
You
look
too.
forward to having you on again in the future.
And thank you for the invitation.
Absolutely. Take care now.
You too.